Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 7th of June, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Patrick Henningsen.
Great to be with you, Brian.
It's really good to have you back. And what's the weather doing in Phoenix, Arizona?
I venture to guess probably this time of year between 100 and 103 Fahrenheit.
100 and 103 Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Be on the safe side.
Okay. Well, it may not quite be that in Glasgow, but we're told that it's pretty sunny today, and the reports we've got from the rest of UK weather-wise are pretty good. Politically, it's all looking a little bit colder. We thought we'd start off today with the UK column exclusive. And we've had some quite remarkable information in this morning. Apparently, British military personnel are being told to vote Remain in the EU. And when this was brought up, we believe with elements of UKIP and some other organisations, there's been D-notices put in place on the national press and media to prevent documentary evidence of this caveat by the British military being published. This is pretty significant stuff. Pat, if we've now got it, this will be, of course, the Ministry of Defence telling people what they should vote in a democratic election.
Yeah, it's very significant. I think if it was a large corporation that employed many thousands of people and they had instructed their employees to vote one way, this would, of course, be plastered over every headline on every media outlet in the country. If any part of the civil service or any government department, if they were told there was a party whip line on the Brexit vote, this would be headline news, right?
And indeed, I think we've actually had that occur. Was it a banking institution? I've got at the back of my mind that we've actually had that sort of publicity on a commercial organisation doing that, telling its workforce what they should vote.
And no one more important and crucial than probably the British military in terms of a national institution and the impact this might have on the vote coming up in the end of June.
Absolutely right. Well, we've got quite a lot of information in today's news on the military, and perhaps we're going to see the significance. But if we follow that exclusive through, we can bring some more on screen because we've also got this. Germany is calling for the urgent release of what's being called the military patchwork paper. And the aim of this paper is to speed up the creation of a full EU military structure. And the word patchwork has come because at the moment people are saying, well, we've sort of got an EU military, but it's a bit patchy. We haven't got everybody drawn into it. And we're told that the Germans are saying it's time to get on, let's get the whole thing locked together. And then we've got two other bits here. The EU Commission is holding back an announcement of an EU Coast Guard and an EU border force until after the EU referendum. So, Patrick, this is all coming up to the surface now. All the plans are in place that the UK is to be totally locked into the European Union. And of course, surprise, surprise, or perhaps not, we got the Germans driving the military integration.
As we'll go to show later in the program, a few stories developing, but the key points of what you just showed there, Brian, are in terms of the EU and in terms of a potential EU army, or let's say fait accompli of an EU army, is the border force. It's the hard shell of Europe. The migrant crisis has been the perfect story, the perfect Hegelian catalyst to call for that as the solution. We need a militarized EU border force, a militarized Coast Guard. That's number one. The second will be, which will be coming after, which will be talk of EU missions, military missions around the world, kind of replacing or joining in just behind the slipstream of NATO. And this will be really important in terms of justifying the EU as an institution, as a superstate, because then they'll be, well, it's a question of national security. Then they'll say that we need to stay in the EU because if we don't have intelligence sharing, data sharing agreements with Brussels, Britain will be left out of the intelligence loop. So you'll have MI5 people probably, or GCHQ heads coming out and saying we must stay. This is all part of the same conversation.
Yeah,
so it's security, and it's, well, imagine if we're involved in a conflict. Imagine if the EU army was in a hot zone. We can't risk breaking Europe up. It's a national security. It's a European global security issue now.
Yeah.
So these are all, this is the, I've always said, Brian, that the military aspect is the cement that holds Europe together. Just like you could say the same thing in the United States. There'll be no talk of secession from any states because the military is spread out all over the country, and bases and local economies are reliant on the superstructure of that military in the US.
Military.
Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned borders there. Let's just bring this one on screen again. Just quite remarkable. I tweeted this one out yesterday because I couldn't resist it. We had the British frigate HMS Sunderland operating in the English Channel in order to pick up migrants and to help them ashore in the UK, so a ferry service being provided by the Royal Navy. But of course, on the left, we've got the Bilderberger and banker Sir Peter Sutherland, who has stated that we need this mass migration in Europe in order to break down nation states and national ethnic identities. So this man, very powerful, operating Bilderberg as well as the EU and the UN, is saying it for exactly that. And apparently British security services are completely unaware of people like this.
Well, you also have to look at the problem, reaction, solution aspect of this, Brian. You can't tell me that France, as a country that arguably is as wealthy and well-equipped and well-resourced as the UK, they can't handle the migrant situation, that they have to give a free pass and allow them to accumulate at Calais and then to go over on rafts or whatever. It's kind of a ridiculous in the 21st century situation.
Well, it's a game that's been played out now over many years, isn't it? That France can't control the immigrant flows, and so...
And is this a game, Brian, that's been played out to basically cater for the very situation that we have right now?
Well, I would say so. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that theme as we have a look at the military. But you and several other people picked up that the great debate is on tonight, which is Mr. Farage is going to be versus David Cameron. So this is the BBC report here. And I'll just read out this bit of text and then we'll get you to comment. The BBC reports that an internal analysis commissioned by Leave EU advised that Farage should only be used sparingly as a campaign spokesman because of the risk he could alienate voters with a divisive or reactionary tone on issues like immigration. So there's the political correctness come in. Farage is already under pressure with a call for him to apologise this evening for comments suggesting mass sex attacks such as those that took place in Cologne could happen in the UK if it remains in the EU. So the BBC doing what they do best, which is undermining Nigel Farage and UKIP. I'll just bring this other one in as well because we've got The Guardian here. Farage under fire, and not just from Remain. Nigel Farage, the long-time espouser of Brexit, has so far been rather shouldered aside in the campaign by official vote Leave frontman Boris Johnson and Michael Gove. Today he's back in the spotlight. So it's sort of half-hearted praise, as always, for Nigel Farage. But what do you make of this then, Farage versus Cameron?
Well, just this idea that Farage, as the Guardian said in their headline, has enemies not just in the Remain camp. This is what the media does in elections or any situations. They'll pick out who are the protagonists, the actors on each side, and then they'll create a situation where, oh, there's discontent within the Leave camp, or discontent.
So this is the wooden spoon stirring.
This is exactly what it is. And this is all played out in a kind of theatrical way in the media. Meanwhile, the agenda is already set behind the scenes, as we've talked about on this program.
Yeah.
You and Mike have as well. And I completely agree with your position on it, that no matter what the vote result is on June 23rd, it will not change the overarching long-term agenda of Europe.
Which is integration within Europe.
Which is integration within Europe, and also the implementation of a transnational corporate superstate structure, like through TTIP and trans-Pacific partnerships in this way.
Yeah.
So that's not going to change. And this isn't being debated about, and it's actually more of an issue for national sovereignty and personal sovereignty for every citizen than Brexit is.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in this man, because Boris, of course, is the head of It's Time to Come Out. How can this possibly be? I watched this situation arise. We've apparently got Tory MPs with absolutely 180-degree apart views over Europe, stay in or leave. And yet in this campaign, it's all jolly, old boy, all amicable stuff. There's no real animosity between them. So what do you make of Boris heading out and this interview with Andrew Marr?
Well, I was looking at the John Major interview where John Major came out as irate and combative and, out of nowhere. No, I haven't seen him in 20 years.
Yeah.
But there he was on the TV yesterday. And then the segment with Boris came on after that. And we had the television volume down. We're just looking at the body language, looking at the facial expressions. And it's interesting, when you turn the volume down, you can really tell a lot of what you're watching. And so I was watching Boris Johnson, and we've been watching Boris for years as London mayor.
Yeah.
And there's just something about this picture that just isn't right. It almost looked like he was kind of having a laugh with the whole thing in this segment with Andrew Marr. And the body language, the facial expressions, they weren't convincing at all.
Well, we got a couple more shots we can bring in, because we can't just show the BBC clip, so we can bring this one in here. Obviously, his mouth is open, so he must be lying.
So this is an interesting. If you look at Body Language 101 or any guide to body language, when the person, the subject, has got their eyes either up to the upper right corner or they're scanning for an answer in their head, not necessarily recalling from genuine memory. So this is a dead giveaway in any debate situation, or if you're interrogating a suspect, you can tell if they're making it up as they go along, or they're just kind of having a laugh with it. And in this case, Boris exhibited a lot of this body language during this segment with Andrew Marr. It's fascinating just to watch it from end to end. Turn the volume off and just watch his body language.
Well, let's bring in the next one, or the last one here.
This is one of your favorites.
This is the favorite. Sorry, I can't stop laughing because it's all so obvious. This is the famous hand where he's got a fist, but you have to keep your thumb on top, so that it looks it's not threatening. This is NLP symbol at work.
This is NLP kind of body language. So Tony Blair was the real pioneer of the thumb pressed on top of the knuckle, and David Cameron has basically, they've all had the same coaches.
I agree with you on this.
Yeah. And said we must drive this agenda through, and then Hillary Clinton uses this to great effect. Barack Obama as well.
Right.
All the modern sort of politicians who've had the body language training in the last 15 years use these. And so this is, when you see this means they're absolutely lying, probably, because they need to drive home whatever they're saying. They don't believe it enough. It's not enough. It's not authentic enough coming out of their mouth. They must drive it home with NLP body language.
Yeah.
So again, Boris was doing this kind of almost, just over the top.
So what's
totally
the
over the top.
What's the game with this man? The vote is for Brexit. What does that allow?
It seems to me that Boris is the kind of he's the face of the Leave campaign within the Tories, so that this could provide a nice transition of leadership from David Cameron to Boris Johnson. Because if you look at the Tory party, they're not going to lose any members of their party, whatever the result of this vote is. But if they could be seen to have a leader who appears to be sympathetic towards the on-the-fence UKIP crowd, they will gain votes and gain members in the next general election. So could be a very shrewd.
So Boris, who's basically unelectable. I mean, if you look at the man and you look at what he really is, what he really says, his behaviour, he's unelectable. Certainly as a prime minister, but he wins the Brexit. Therefore, he picks up a lot of fan mail, and they slide him across into the position.
Even if he doesn't win the Brexit, he's still going to get the fan mail.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically this makes him palatable for some voters, enough maybe to have some kind of a seamless transition of leadership, whereas otherwise it might cause an upheaval or some discontent within the party. But so this is a ruse, in my opinion, Brian. I can't see Boris Johnson, David Cameron being old school buddies, being on the opposite sides of this issue. It's just not realistic.
They've sat in a room and said, with a whiskey or something, and said, you take one side and I'll take the other. So this is Marxist tactics that you control the opposition, isn't it? You create the opposition, you control it, therefore you don't have a problem wherever the main view goes.
So Boris is the lead false flag, basically, for this particular situation.
Okay, well, of course, if Trump gets in, they've got matching hairdos, haven't they? The old blonde hair, so we can watch that one closely. Well, what sort of decisions do these politicians make? We better go straight to the Daily Mail for this report. And we've got NATO putting large numbers of troops now right up on the Russian borders. And this one talking about Anaconda, a nice little snake name. And you pointed out the snake, of course, strangles its victim. So we're mentioning 31,000 troops, tanks and jets from 24 countries, all being pushed into Eastern Europe. And of course, the Kremlin has been complaining and responding to this. But what is the West totally continually saying that Russia is the aggressor? These are some of the displays that are being carried out before the exercises start. So we've got Polish troops carrying flags. And this was some of the comment here. It says that Russia has long objected to NATO's expansion in its Soviet era backyard, and in 1997 NATO formally agreed not to install permanent bases in former Warsaw Pact states. In line with the agreement, the Pentagon said in March it would deploy an additional armoured brigade of about 4,200 troops in Eastern Europe from early 2017, but done on a rotational basis. So NATO has been careful to reassure Moscow ahead of the July summit that the Cold War is history and we want it to stay that way. So this is doing the opposite with their hands that NATO's saying with the mouth, isn't it? That it's all, no, everything is very relaxed and we don't have a problem. But actually what they're doing is pushing troops right up onto Russia's border.
Sure. Is there any rational basis for this idea that Russia is the aggressor? Is this based in reality, or is this based in some kind of rational thinking? If you look at all the actions of NATO in the last 10 years, it's quite obvious who is the aggressor in this story. So,
well, that's overwhelmingly the case, isn't it? I mean, there's no ifs or buts about it. If you look at where the violence is overseas, it always comes back to NATO or the key components, which is the US and the UK.
And they've tried in our media to psyop, to gaslight the hell out of the European public with the Russian submarines off the coast of Sweden, or Russian aircraft flying into British airspace, or the Crimea, or the Russia's invaded the Ukraine. They declared this on our media. Mainstream media have declared at least 5 times that Russia invaded the Ukraine. At least 5 times, if you look at it from February 2014 till around 2015. So it never happened. So it's just what they do is the psychological operation they roll out with the media over and over. In the meantime, military buildup under the auspices of NATO, which we'll come to in a minute, isn't just about NATO. This military buildup.
No, there's more coming. Well, you've reported on this subject here. So there's 21st Century Wire, and Iron Wolf 5,000 take part in NATO drill in Lithuania. I've just brought a bit of the text out there. Largest military exercise in Lithuania for several years, part of a larger operation called Sabre Strike, focuses on the 3 Baltic states, and you've got 10,000 troops. So however you look at it, you've got Western troop movements all over Eastern Europe, and you were quite keen to bring up this picture. We've labelled it Iron Wolf. We've seen it all before. So we've got the Germans here.
Well, the last time you had this is the Iron Wolf that exercised this week. That's the mechanized and motorized infantry brigade, which is based out of Lithuania. So this is part of NATO.
Yeah.
But that was the last time. We go back to that other slide, Operation Mindaugas. That's named after the former Lithuanian ruler in the early 2nd century. So, but that's a German division there, and they had declared a non-aggression pact in 1939, and of course that meant aggression. They invaded Lithuania Lithuania and Germany invaded Poland simultaneously, and this was because they were allied with the Nazis. And the Nazis even had a Waffen SS division in Lithuania, which they eventually disbanded. But so you're looking, this is like history repeating itself. You know, from the Warsaw Pact till now.
We had a discussion comment, which is, if he were alive today, would Hitler, how would he react to seeing these movements going on in Eastern Europe?
Well,
what was your conclusion? I know what mine was. He'd be happy.
To see a NATO European force with a Lithuanian mechanized infantry, just like in 1939, built up on the Russian border, pointing eastward. How would Hitler feel if he were alive? Say, would he be happy or would he be sad? I think he'd be very happy.
With Germany at the centre, of course, of the main European military system.
Which, if it is to be an EU army, I think that you'll see the centre of gravity, just like with the EU, Brian, it's going to go right to Germany. So this is no longer a conspiracy theory. No, this is reality.
We're watching it unfold. Yeah. Well, let's bring in Mr. Fallon, and thanks to Mike Robinson, who picked this up this morning. We've got a number of little quotes from Fallon. So he said, at a time of growing global threats, we can't go it alone. That's why, under the guidance of our Strategic Defence and Security Review, UK defence has become international by design. So what he's really saying there is that Britain is going to start building up these coalitions with other countries, but it always seems that we end up manipulating the other countries into the war. And if we can get other people to die for us, particularly Americans, actually, Pat, this is usually the way it works, we're going to do it. So let's remember that one. We've got this one. We're deepening our strategic relationships, not just with our primary allies, the US, or with France and Germany, but with allies here in the region. Now, this is part of the Shangri-La dialogue, which is actually to do with, we're out in the Far East, Malaysia. We'll come on to that in a minute, but obviously what he's talking about makes sense for the European theatre as well. We got this one. Britain is at the fulcrum of NATO, and besides choosing to maintain our 2% spend, defence spend that is, we're supporting Baltic and Afghan missions and joining the US in urging the alliance to adapt. He had quite a lot to say, actually. We're proud to play a full role in the 5-power defence arrangements, still the only formal multilateral defence arrangement in Southeast Asia. Now, this last statement is the key one to do with the Shangri-La dialogue, which I believe goes back to the very early 70s, 1971. My time in the military, I'd never heard it mentioned. Now, all of a sudden, this agreement after all those years is being pulled forward. But what's this man saying is that we're going to continue playing in NATO, but basically we're not going to do it on the basis of nation states having armed forces. It's all going to be pulled in together.
Into a collective. And so this is the system of interdependency for allied military blocs. So in the case of the EU, which is what NATO is kind of a template of, is I think the EU army can draft in nicely right behind NATO to fill this role that NATO has filled, but in a more organized and formal fashion. And so it's interdependency. So France would carry the naval responsibilities, and maybe their aircraft will carry this. Germany will be in charge of that, but no one country would have all these abilities.
No, because you then control each country. So
and the manufacturing defense contracting aspect of that is key, because that system of interdependency across a large area with different countries creates this. It really glues the EU together.
Yeah.
This is what the same system the Soviet Union had with their military, and they've had problems with this with the Ukraine in the last couple of years because they had old defense arrangements and dependencies that were left over from the Soviet Union. So it became a weakness once the Soviet Union broke up.
Well, a good example of what you're talking about, of course, is the civilian air industry, where you've got aircraft manufactured where one country produces the wings, Britain produces the engines, Germany produces another section. So this is all friendly cooperation, but what it actually does is destroys the national manufacturing base, and the dependency means that you're no longer free. Well, the picture gets better because if Russia is such a threat, we would have thought Britain's armed forces would be getting bigger, but in fact we seem to have a problem that they're shrinking. So we're just going back. Some of this is old news, but it's becoming highly relevant as we see the rhetoric ramped up against Russia. So here we've got the Telegraph saying that Britain's armed forces are shrinking by the day, and they're kind enough to put in some MOD statistics, which are very useful for us. So on the graph there, we can see massive peaks for the First World War and the Second World War, when we had over 4.5 million men and women under arms. And then you can see to the right, it's tailing off. Well, let's have a look at those figures in a bit more detail. So this is where we are roughly at the moment. The army at about 100,000. To be cut down to about 80,000, and in fact UK column has heard through the back door 50,000 mentioned. Well, this is a coastal defence force. This is not capable of any major operation. Navy significantly cut and heading towards 30,000 men and women by 2020, and the RAF 35,000. Now somebody on the Telegraph site commented that the combined strength of Britain's hairdressers is now more than that of Her Majesty's Armed Forces, which was a pretty astute comment. But the armed forces are being cut to a level where we've got to rely on allies, which is exactly the point you've just made, Patrick. Cut and cut. And we know, because the information is now coming to the surface in Westminster, the real agenda has been to level the EU military numbers. So while Britain was too strong in a military sense, that had to be cut so that it was easier to merge us in with the Germans, French and the Dutch, of course.
Yeah, and also so there's no competing interests as well as to who is making what and for whom.
No, somebody can sit over the top of that structure and simply tell the senior military brass what they will be doing, and they haven't even got to fight their case against their own government. They now have to fight their case against a foreign military. So they can all be played off against each other.
And this is an important point, Brian, and we'll move on in a minute, but we'll also investigate this a lot closer, hopefully in a program that I'm developing with Mike Robinson for Insight. But once you have the conglomerate, the collective of the EU military, the EU army, then you look at the amount of mergers and acquisitions right now, even in this country, with Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, major U.S. defense contractors, slowly gobbling up various pieces and remnants of British aerospace or the aircraft industry. And then what you have is the big U.S. defense contractors will then wield the biggest stick in Brussels. And then you have a totally paradigm shift with regards to another paradigm shift, which is really moving the center of gravity over towards the United States for the EU army as well.
Right, and we can think of that in commercial terms as well as political, because on one hand we could say, well, that pulls the control into the US government, but in fact where the control goes is in the middle of the global defense corporations.
Absolutely.
So this is very dangerous stuff. Well, have a look at this, because if we say we've got shrinking armed forces, the Telegraph was also reporting here that there was a recruitment problem now with Britain's armed forces. And so the diagram there, I think, shows about a 34% shortfall. But who has been put in charge of recruiting? Well, this Mirror article hit the subject on the spot. Army short of 2,000 troops as recruitment firm chaos drives away soldiers. So what the government did is privatised recruitment. And who did they use? Well, Capita was one of the companies being used. So you bring in a private company and then it fails. And of course, the papers are reporting this is all accidental. But if we just put what we can now see happening, this was the comment. It said, military experts fear incompetence at recruitment company Capita means Britain is not being kept safe amid heightened security fears. To which we say, well, this is not incompetence, because what Capita was doing was exactly what the government wanted in the first place.
Twofold, Brian. Not only is it not incompetence, but they're also at the same, on the other hand, they're saying, oh, it's incompetence. And at a time when security risks and fears are heightened, that is also a contrived reality as well. So they're getting you on both sides of this story, Brian. You can see the public are in the middle, being sandwiched by two
be fearful, it's being cut.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't resist putting a UK column plug in here, because back in 2011, we were warning, and we warned and warned again, of what was going on with the Franco-British Council. This is where meetings were taking place with the French in the British ambassador's residence in Paris to decide about the 50-year defence pact with the French. The text here says we're to be stripped of the military power to act alone. Our military command and control structures are to be weakened and confused by French collaboration and partnering, and we are to be stripped of nuclear weapons. That's the next bit coming, because it will be the French that have the main nuclear arsenal in Europe. The security of Britain is being destroyed under the cloak of Cameron's Franco-British Defence Treaty. So we couldn't have put it plainer there. And of course, those meetings were simply held out of sight of the British public. There was no debate in Westminster. Cameron then comes into power and simply says, well, we're going to have a defence pact with the French for 50 years. And
obfuscated by one of these charities or foundation type organizations, not a government.
Charity.
So all done behind closed doors, in secret, zero media fanfare, zero coverage, zero discussion, zero debate.
Yeah.
All done.
And we even know that senior British military officers and their French counterparts had to wear civilian suits to the meetings.
That's interesting.
Now, to me, this was to tone it down. If you're there in uniform and you're being asked to do something which is off to one side, treason is over here, let's just say it's one side of the line, you're in suits, so you're not sure whether it's formal or informal. Very, very dirty stuff.
Well, the legality of all this is questionable, really.
It's treason.
You could.
I'm going to say it's treason.
Well, you might be right there, Brian, because this is making decisions of a nation's military. I mean, this is one of the things that defines a nation state: is armed forces and
absolutely,
and its infrastructure and its democratic system and so forth. So all done behind closed doors, the stroke of a pen, in civvies, under the auspices of a charity.
Had to be the French, because the British public would not have accepted this if it had been the Germans. Secret, dirty meetings behind closed doors with the Germans, woof. No, it had to be the French, because that's where everybody goes on holiday, those nice people. So let's have a look at another attack that's coming on Britain's military, and we're going to get on to the delicate subject of women in the military. So we've got Mr. Fallon again here, and he's been on video saying that the army fitness tests are going to be rewritten to make sure female soldiers can qualify for frontline duty. So this is political correctness. But if you actually have a look about what this does, so this is another Mail article here in which it was saying quite rightly fewer than 40 women will be tough enough for frontline action, as Britain's first female squadron commander says the move could make the army less effective. Now, I can imagine there's some ladies out there, hackles beginning to rise, but actually what is going on here is both sexes are being played off against each other to the detriment of both. And we can now start to see this coming to the surface. So in this third Mail article, and you can check with other papers because it's been reported in other sources as well, but this one was particularly good. It says that sex bullying and a toxic atmosphere is the result of putting young ladies amongst a military environment. And if you go into these articles, there's a female major who says, well, when we got rid of the Women's Army Corps, what we actually did is took away the protection. So you can now see a breakdown of discipline. You've got suicides, you've got very unpleasant bullying. This is the deliberate undermining of a military structure by political correctness.
Yeah. So the morale and these things that you've probably experienced firsthand through these policies over the years, it can get progressively worse.
Well, we say it's sex that drives it. So you take a military unit, which is young, fit men, you introduce the girls into it, and in no time at all the problem starts. And the insidious thing is that the relationships always tend to be from the girls to the more senior people. Now, you could argue that's the fault of the blokes, because the senior blokes prey on the young girls coming in, and that's certainly reported in Deep Cut. But the end result is this toxic atmosphere.
Isn't this just human nature, though? Isn't this just common sense? But
to provide some distance, you mean?
Well, these things happen when you mix men and women. But are they not trying to beat this out of society? That the future, a brave new world where there is no human nature, where this what might be considered, relations between men and women, no longer. No. And no preying of senior officers on new female.
Well, this is absolutely right. This is part of the hive, isn't it, to get rid of sexual identity. A young lady who was learning at the London School of Economics recounted what I'm about to say, that she made a statement at the school and said, "As a woman, I believe," to which the tutor says, "What makes you think you're a woman?" And the debate was then skewed across to whether there was a difference in the sexes.
Well, just briefly, go ahead. Or do you want to show this? But
let me just show this one, and we'll come back, because this is on topic. But we've talked about this book several times. It is available free to download as a PDF, although it's become very expensive to buy off the internet. What I want to bring people's attention to is this table, which is about how to break down society. And what Christopher Story was talking about was a plan to rip apart Western society by infiltration and political correctness and subversion. But in that table was this line. It's still a bit small, but under security, it says the methods were to be the penetration and demoralisation of intelligence community, the police and the military. And significantly, it mentions homosexuality here. We'll save that for another time. But then it says women in the military, collectivism of military power and security. So now in this thing, we've got both things being talked about. The collectivization of the military, we see that happening, women in the military, and the result of doing this is a degradation of intelligence quality, military power, and recruitment pool, defenselessness. So whoever wrote the table, and it's attributed to a Soviet defector, this is pretty accurate. So this was written first in 1970. We're now in 2016. It's coming to a head.
Yeah, and there's a lot of complaints that the same sort of thing is going on in the United States. And if you look at U.S. media coverage, especially in the last 12 months, Brian, they've really been pushing on some of the news networks this women in combat, and these women combat units and women in infantry, and really trying to beat that door down. And what this also does is it takes a block of voters, a block of the public, women in general, that tend to be more anti-war, that tend to be more pro-peace, if you like, than the male target population. And what it's doing is it's kind of engineering a consensus among millennials or women on the basis of gender identity. That to normalize military aggression, to normalize the massive amount of operations the U.S. military has going on simultaneously overseas, the amount of dirty wars going on that are being paid for by the taxpayer, Okay, this kind of helps to normalize this, to help buy a little consensus in there. And I personally don't, I think if you have to draft women to be on the front line of infantry, I think you're probably failing as a society or a nation state drastically, that you have to go and then dip into you have to start aggressively recruiting women to fight with and to shoot and bomb and to maim and kill.
I would say so. You can put the argument over on the fact that originally, when you saw women in the armed services, they were doing jobs of a higher intellectual status. They were doing jobs that required great care, great precision. So there were females in the armed services, but they were away from the front end, but they were doing very valuable jobs. By bringing them onto the battlefield, what are you doing? You're causing all sorts of problems, and I think it's degrading to the women, and they're going to speak up for more wars because they were in the military and fought.
I think there's a social engineering aspect that goes beyond that, which is that normalizing a long-term war a la 1984, Oceania versus Eurasia, forever, low-intensity conflict.
Is
this
accepted.
is just an acceptable part of life, and we should get used to it.
Right.
Just as Eric Blair outlined in his great novel.
Tony Blair, did you say?
Eric Blair.
Okay.
Distant relation.
Well, if we want wars overseas, of course, at the moment, Britain hasn't got the armed forces to do that up front. What you do it is behind the back door. So enter British Special Forces. Now, according to the UK press and media at the moment, the British Special Forces can do everything. They can defend London. They can accost the terrorists who are all there in London. They can get over into Libya or Afghanistan. And here we've got operating inside Syria alongside the rebels. Apparently the West, I'm sorry, we've jumped across to this. Sorry, I've just come back here, my mistake. So we've got British Special Forces operating inside Syria and alongside the rebels there. And the slide which we're about to bring up, of course, is that there's a bit of trouble with moderate opposition.
No, what I'll do is I'll put these two together. This is an important story in the Telegraph. This is an important story. So this is British Special Forces alongside the moderate rebels in Aleppo right now today.
Right.
This is being admitted by the mainstream press. Who are these moderates? Well, it's been proven, and including a letter to the UN Security Council this week, the al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda and Syria are fighting together in the same areas with the moderate rebels, shelling civilians in other parts of Aleppo. And so our British Special Forces are not only fighting alongside the moderate rebels, but Al-Qaeda in Syria. So our British Special Forces, according to all reports, except for what you see on the mainstream headline news, are fighting with Al-Qaeda in Syria. There's no other way to put it, because this is the situation. Al-Qaeda and the terrorist groups are ubiquitous within what they call the moderate rebels.
Right.
There are no moderate rebels. So what the Telegraph is referring to is a fiction. It's an idea that they want to get across, that there's somehow a difference between the terrorists who are currently besieging civilians in Aleppo. That's the fact.
Right.
And so that's a very disturbing story when you read below the headlines.
Fits with former Conservative MP Brooks Newmark, of course, who was boasting that he'd been on the Turkish-Syrian border with General Idris from the Free Syrian Army, and saying at the time, well, of course, they're working alongside al-Nusra then. So Conservative MPs knew what was going on.
So many admissions, even the CIA admitting that their arms are being used by al-Nusra Front, you know, not just the British side, the US side too. So there's plenty of evidence, a plethora of evidence that this is the case. So what you're seeing in this headline is really a game of semantics. It's a game of labeling. This is what the U.S. and its coalition have been reduced to, is a game of labels. Okay. But the reality is something else.
Right, so let's get into this one then, which is the moderate opposition involved in ongoing attacks on civilians.
So 2,000 terrorists have amassed in these areas where the so-called British Special Forces are fighting alongside the moderate rebels. This is a Tet offensive. equivalent, which
Yeah.
is what's going on in Syria. And there's plenty of evidence for this, but they're sieging civilian government-held areas. This is where the civilians are going. They're fleeing the terrorist-held areas in eastern Aleppo, and they're going to the western side to take refuge. And they're being now shelled indiscriminately by al-Nusra and the moderate rebels.
Who are in turn being helped by British Special Forces.
They're all terrorists. Arar Sham, al-Nusra Front, and any of the other long list of Jaish Islam, all these people that the U.S. is trying to keep off the terrorist list in order to label them as moderate rebels. Can you see the fraud here? And what you're seeing in this news story here, this report, is the reason why. This is part of a major all-out offensive to basically try to hold Aleppo in terrorist hands.
Yeah.
This is all it is. This is why the U.S. wanted to buy time. They're trying to basically derail the peace talks in Geneva. Because the minute there's peace, or the minute the fighting slows down, Brian, the USA has no business to be in Syria. Neither the British.
And the country will stabilise.
And the country will stabilize. So, and if a peace deal is struck, that's going to make it even harder for the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Saudi Arabia and Qatar are sponsoring these terrorist groups as well. So this is the U.S.-led coalition. This is the biggest fraud in history. I can't believe they're able to sell this in the mainstream media as a coalition, when in fact they're working pretty much seamlessly with the goals of al-Nusra Front and ISIS.
Right.
There's no difference. They both oppose the same enemies. They're both fighting on the same ground. So what's the difference? There is no difference. The U.S. and its allies are on the wrong side of this conflict.
Okay, so take us in this one, because you've reported here that the U.S. requests protection for Al-Qaeda as the atrocities in Aleppo.
You can't really make this stuff up, Brian. It's just so this was a request made by the U.S. to the Russian Foreign Ministry to basically don't bomb al-Nusra fronts, and this was a request that was put in reported last Friday, Brian. So if you look at the timing of that last Friday to the announcement that British Special Forces are with the moderate rebels today, or yesterday, and on Monday. You have to look at the timing of it. The reason the U.S. were saying call off the airstrikes, you're hitting our moderate rebels, because they didn't want them hitting them and the terrorists in Aleppo, so that they could do this offensive this week. When you look at the stories as they progress, it's quite obvious what the agenda is. And
we are all being played, effectively.
We're all being played, and to me it's frankly shocking that there are no news analysts at the BBC or CNN who could point this out. You know, is only Russia Today or this program, or...
They're only reading their own material, Patrick, aren't they? This is the problem.
It's kind of obvious what's going on in Syria. I can't believe people are still kind of going on this delusion. Yeah. That somehow there's these freedom fighters, and they're trying to, it's the Arab Spring.
Save the people.
Save the people. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, maybe this lady will get in power and save the whole situation.
Well, do
you think?
This is an amazing story. She's been declared the presumptive nominee by Associated Press. They haven't even gone to a convention yet, Brian.
We better name her for those listening. It's Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. So she's already been declared the presumptive nominee. They haven't gone to a vote. They haven't even finished the major primaries. She hasn't actually got the number of delegates required to be the presumptive nominee, but they're counting what they call superdelegates, who are meant to go to the convention at some point in the future this summer and to cast their vote for Hillary Clinton. That's what's given her the so-called delegate total. So again, this is a case of the media declaring a victor in advance of the result. This is all it is. So the Bernie Sanders camp, they're absolutely irate about this. They think this stinks to high heaven, and I think they have quite a good case. They should go to the convention. In fact, in 2008, Brian, Hillary Clinton demanded that they not declare Barack Obama the presumptive nominee, and she took it all the way to the floor and even passed the first vote in 2008. Right. So this is like the pot calling the kettle black. It's
well, incredible. That wouldn't be difficult for her, would it?
Well, this goes to show you that there's no consistency with political leaders. It's only what's good for them at the time, and they never do anything on principles. This is a good example of that.
Yeah. Okay, well, what a situation we're in. War, as you said, 1984, constant war in the background, people trying to get on with their lives. All we hear is war, war and more war. And of course, war is the excuse to drive the political agenda. Okay, thank you very much for that. That ends today's news. Thank you very much for your support. If you're not already a subscriber to UK Column, please consider becoming one. If you can make a donation, we need your help and support to do what we do. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye-bye.